40, which is the beginning of the open part of the agenda. I think, and we'll start the video, but I think you will get the flavour that we're really a once over likely through here now, unless we can delve into it in questions, but there's no need for a long summary. The report's been read and it is pretty clear where the options are. I think for the sake of time today, we want to do some other things after this meeting. So we are now back and open. We are resuming the Urban Form and Transport Committee. Welcome back to our hundreds of viewers, as we often say. And we are at page 40. We'll hand over to you again, Peter, or to Alistair to introduce this. Thank you.
So just introducing this, we've undertaken a study to look at the availability of short-term wins in relation to providing park and ride facilities across the city within around a 12-month period. Some key success factors framed that assessment, and those success factors are identified in paragraph 13 on page 42. They talk about car parking shortages and parking prices, particularly in CBD areas, vehicle congestion along routes feeding into the CBD and associated bus priority on those routes, a good quality and high frequency bus service, and a sufficient population or catchment to help drive patronage of the facility, and a close proximity to main arterial roads of that facility. Initially we looked at quite a number, forget the exact number, but it was in the hundreds of publicly owned sites across the city that met certain locational and area requirements. That then got multi-criteria down to a number of potential or more potential sites. Those then got isolated to 3 particular locations. The success factors relative to each of those locations aren't met, but some of those criteria do apply to some of the sites, and you'll see that in table 17. The option analysis then sort of went into more detail of the cost and, I guess, regulatory consenting processes of each option, and also did some analysis around likely patronage, and therefore helped us understand uptake. We've liaised with Regional Council around their ability to support this in the near term. Their advice to date is that they could support this with funding support at least for the first 12 months from Tauranga City Council's annual plan funding, and then they would look to include something in their next annual plan process. They've still to have a more detailed conversation with the operator to confirm availability of buses and drivers to support additional services. So there is that constraint, and they need to have that negotiation with the operator around contract change to support delivery. That's probably all I need to say on the report, unless Craig or Peter want to add anything.
I think it covers it pretty well. Any questions then of the report from elected members? Councillor Morris.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Is there any reason why the former TEL site office in Tara Road, Papamoa, was not considered as potential park and ride site?
Through the chair, it was considered. It was in the long list and early identification. In fact, it made it close to the shortlist until we discovered some pretty significant ground condition issues out there, with particularly, I'm not a geologist, a geotechnical engineer, but it's a big layer of peat soil that's very unstable, and it'd be very difficult to park cars on it without them sinking into the ground effectively.
Our poor partners in NZTA used to have a site office on there in a car park, which there was a small low-level amount of remediation done there. They used to also park some earth-moving equipment there. So I certainly appreciate the wider context of that part of Tara Road, and 5 metres of peat is quite shallow in that part of the world. But there was a gravel car park and road there which did have buildings on it, did have large earth moving equipment on it, did have cars parked on it. And the benefit, of course, is that number 30X and number 30 and 36 all go directly past that site. Is that something we could perhaps have another look at? I've got a pair of bolt cutters. We can go down there and open the gate for you, and we can get it going this afternoon.
Yeah, we can always look at more sites and further consider, I guess, the economics or the costs and benefits of each. But yeah, Craig is right in terms of that initial assessment. When we looked at the construction costs and actually providing a sort of a relatively attractive and safe park and ride facility, it did exclude itself from the sort of short list of options.
It'd be more of a quick win thing rather than a developed car park to the sort of standards we'd expect, being gravel. Did we also look at Gordon Spratt Reserve? Because there's a small asphalt car park in there, small, like 40 cars, I think, and next to it is a large grass overflow car park. Did we look at that area as well?
Yes, in terms of using a reserve for the purpose of a park and ride, with a reserve, any parking needs to be associated with the use of the reserve. So that means that if we were to investigate a potential park and ride on a reserve, we have to revoke the reserve status, which is a very long process, and therefore it didn't meet the criteria of a quick win park and ride that can be developed in a reasonably short time frame.
Okay, Councillor Hughes.
I'm just wondering, within this study, if we're looking at a ferry service, and I don't know how far down the line we are with that, does it make sense to look at ferry service park and rides within the frame of this same study?
Yeah, it would do, and I guess that would be certainly a much longer term consideration. UFT has touched on rail and ferry services. That's still to be worked through, and that sort of criteria analysis to take us from the 4 to the preferred program. But it comes in my mind. It comes back to, if we are to provide an attractive park and ride facility, we need those other connections in a sort of a system-wide response. So whether it's parking or other services or connections to that final destination or origin point of a trip is pretty important to make them successful.
Councillor Clout.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. Given that there are thousands and thousands of car movements, right around the city, how many people would we need to get on the park and ride to make any noticeable difference? Because I'm concerned that you'll need thousands out of their cars onto the buses to make a noticeable difference. Otherwise, we're probably just wasting our time. That's my question.
So I guess there are certain elements of a transport system that help make it successful. Park and rides are part of that system. They certainly work in Auckland. They help provide an alternative, and I guess that's part of the direction we've got from government and the sort of local aspiration to provide more attractive alternatives. Alone, it won't solve our issues, but done right with the right supporting factors and the right policy environment, they could work here.
Thank you. Councillor Hollis. Kitty.
So I was just wondering, obviously we've got a bit of an issue, as we're aware, with our public transport system. I mean, if all these places were talking to each other, surely a solution could come up, and I understand that's what you're doing. I suppose it would be really difficult to imagine all the multi-modal concepts as well as public transport if we're talking to regional council who are going to come to the party with that. What is the best option for us as a city? and for our public, because are we engaging with the public on this to see what they want to do? What is the, I mean, I know that we've had bike surveys and we've had bus surveys. I'm wondering if all of us were going to jump on any of these things. Is there a survey or is there some engagement with our community around this?
So there was engagement as part of the Regional Council's Public Transport Blueprint document, which is the document that essentially frames the current bus service, and part of the implementation plan of that included park and ride facilities. But I guess this particular piece of work looked at the very short-term opportunities. So it narrowed down to sort of 3 locations. The Transport System Plan project will help lift us up again and understand those levers across the system and the supporting infrastructure to then deliver a more successful multimodal transport system. Anticipating park and ride would be part of that.
Just supplementary to that, which is great, I suppose it would come down to cost for a lot of people as well. You know, people aren't jumping on buses for some reason. Okay, and I'm just hoping that park and ride's a great idea, that it wasn't going to be exorbitant in its pricing.
Yeah, so price is one of those key success factors, and I guess we'd need to look across the price signals within the system, you know, whether it's parking prices within a centre area, the cost of the bus, the cost of travel, and the time of travel. I guess people take all of those things into account when they're deciding whether to take one mode choice over another.
Councillor Robson. Oh, yeah.
Have we looked at where all the informal park and ride places are for each route? I'm just thinking there's probably car parks within 50 metres or 100 metres of each bus stop. You know, in the past fortnight I've parked at Grierson Park, on Cabot Road and on Condor Drive on wet days to get to the bus stop so that I don't have to walk in the rain. I'm just wondering whether we've looked at how big that informal reservoir is.
So anecdotally, we have had awareness that park and rides is happening informally. You know, people are parking in places across the city and then catching buses into their final destination. Examples being around the Arataki area again, and I also understand partly out at Tauriko already. But we haven't got any particular study on those exact locations and their numbers of people that are doing that.
Is that all, Councillor Arbery?
Yes, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Councillor Robson, then Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, forgive me, I'll be clear on the question so it's easy to answer. The work being done here and the work being done or planned as part of the TSP, this is a complement to a quick entree before the TSP would pick this up, because I assume it's going to be picked up as part of the TSP work. What I'm seeing in the report doesn't give me much to work with, I suppose. You know, the origin destination questions are still being asked, the pricing questions are still being asked, the demand analysis, there's no real demand analysis done. I mean, we are, what can we do with this? I suppose there's a whole set of subsequent questions that one can ask, but I'm just wondering whether the top line takeout is, forget it. If I was to summarise it, forget it, that, you know, address this properly through the TSP. Would that be an unreasonable takeout at this stage? Because I'm just thinking about the questions one can ask, and they've been asked in various ways by various people. So,
I think the committee has options here. I think our paper and our investigation to date identifies that those typical success factors to support implementation of a park and ride in the short term probably aren't there at the moment. Some are met, others are not. So there would be some risks and potential issues associated with enabling a park and ride facility at one of these locations in the short term. That said, there might also be some benefits. We get to trial an on-the-ground park and ride facility, and we may learn. So I guess it's that balance between the theory is telling us and the practice elsewhere is telling us that certain things and conditions need to be in place, but we, or the committee, may choose, irrespective of those, to go ahead and just see whether the conditions here prove different and park and ride can be successful.
I can ask a supplementary then. What is the cost of this trial?
So I can't confirm that at the moment. What we've done to date is understood typical operational costs, and we're suggesting that they're around 300 to 400k per annum. We would need to have a longer conversation with the regional council and their operator around those exact costs. We would also then need to, in the next level of detailed design, confirm those physical capital costs of the facility itself. There is an estimate in the report which talks about percentage of percentage value of costs for that.
Picking up on that, if you go, the question about the staff view is on paragraph 32 of the report, where just as Alistair spoke, and our staff advice is not to proceed at this time, but because the report came from a resolution of council and a directive to investigate with the view that council wished to proceed, we've acknowledged that, and that's why there are recommendations of both options in the recommendation section. But from a technical and an analysis point of view, we're saying it doesn't seem as there's merits proceeding at this point.
Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, it just seems as though if it's $200,000 or $300,000, you've got to sort of look at the opportunity costs of that. We could throw that at free buses for kids to regional council and possibly do a lot better in the short term, maybe. But I'll put a motion forward to that we don't continue at this time, especially under the current climate that we're in.
So I think for the benefit of the public who often see sites that they think make a lot of sense, one of them, of course, is the racecourse, which has the same problems as the reserve status, I think, has been addressed already. And there's no way through that. We have investigated that already.
It wouldn't be a short-term opportunity.
Okay, so any further questions? Then we'll move to a motion.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
No, you have.
So, is there a danger that if we were to proceed with a park and ride trial and it didn't work, it would kind of sort of sour the future possibilities of park and ride? Would that be a fair comment or question?
Yeah, and the report touches on that. There are some risks and issues associated with perhaps not getting this right.
I think we need to look at still the pursuing the issue with KiwiRail. I think that's very important to get clarification, and I will move a motion first in that regard and change the wording of what is here, and I hope it addresses your issues, Councillor Hughes. But all this investigation is useful because we are eliminating things that have been out there in the public. So I'm going to move, I'm just going to change the word in B, approves further work to investigate rather than progress potential park and ride facilities at 2, the privately owned site in the south, which is simply the discussion about what they may be looking for, because we need to know that. And then we know, in the future, when things occur, and Bay Park, knowing that Bay Park is inclusive of the KiwiRail options to look into, but it isn't to go full steam ahead to a park and ride proposal. It's just simply we're still in the investigative stage, and on the basis of those two things, and then of course there's retaining C as well. Is that a question or a... Yep. Yeah, sure. Yep. And then we'll get a seconder for it.
Would appreciate the preliminary look at the Tara Road site has been done. but it wasn't that long ago we were talking about Memorial Park and gravel. You remember the gravel pit as a park and ride or parking option. Could we just have another look at that Tara Road site? I mean, the gravel was already there. There was a building there. There was heavy machinery there. There was a road there. Can we just have another look at it? As part of that resolution, would that be agreeable to you, Mr. Chair?
It's agreeable to me. We could just add that in, can we?
Right.
As a,
I think the wording would be just the Tara Road site, and I think colleagues know what that means. Yeah.
replace one with the Tara Road site there. Is that okay? And we've changed the word, progress potential park and rides just to work to further investigate, continue the investigation.
Do we need to also put in there to investigate an express from, or is that already just been put through as it is? The express bus from, if a park and ride is to go ahead, because that conversation probably has to happen within the B2B conversation.
I think that's implicit in the
Yep.
investigation that you would be looking into an express thing.
It would be useful if there's clarity. You're not looking at this to be still a short term. You're looking at this for more the medium term. Given I just want to check that's what your expectations of us is, because the original resolution was around some quick solutions that could be implemented within 1 to 2 years. Am I understanding correctly that this resolution is carrying on work, but with a view that it might be sort of beyond that time period, or not? I'm not sure what the exact direction is.
I'll come to that question in a minute, Councillor Olsen, but from my view as the mover, I think we're looking at a 2-year period, at least to get anything going, given what we've got in this report already. Councillor Robson.
There appears to be, from what I'm reading, some confusion in the room. Is it possible to take an adjournment and craft something and put it on the board in front of us? Because I'm never a fan of this sort of approach to developing a motion.
Well, I'll let the chair answer that question. But if we're talking about a 2-year time frame, essentially this will be integrated to any work that the TSP will be doing. So it's one of the same. Right,
So
Alistair?
we might add that. Jaco? Thank you. Take a short 5-minute recess and just
road, which just seems like something that we should be advocating for in any aspect. So hopefully without having to go through Links Ave and coming straight down the B2B, we can progress this through the right channels. Thanks.
Thank you. Other speakers? Councillor Clout.
Yeah, okay, is that right? Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that Alistair did indicate that park and rides are not, of their own a silver bullet, that it's just sort of a tool in the toolbox, as the saying goes. So I think we recognise that, but I think, this is a good way to progress forward. I also appreciate Councillor Morris including Tara Road. It's sort of hard to conceive that sort of cars are going to be sinking down into the bog. I can't see that happening at all. So I think it's definitely a worthwhile project to look at as well, and a location. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Arbery and then Councillor Robson next. Go ahead, Councillor Arbery.
We'd do this separate to the TSB and AFTI process. So, yeah, personally I think we already have a decentralised park and ride system, because the buses go into all the neighbourhoods and there's a lot of on-street car parking where people can already park. So I don't know, while the fundamentals are not in place for a formal park and ride service, it's going to cost more than a car and it's going to take longer by the time you park there. Walk over to your bus and it comes every 15 minutes. I just don't see it being viable yet, and paying 300 to 400 grand extra a year for it. I just think that money would be better off spent, giving it to the regional council and saying offer free buses to school kids. So, yeah, I don't support the current motion. I think I like the idea of having the rail buses, but I think we should be doing that through TSP rather than us crafting our own resolutions to come up with that. So yes, I'm keen to just go with A, no other resolution, and then leave it to the existing process to look at all those other options.
Thank you, Councillor Arbery. Next speaker, Councillor Robson.
What he said.
Councillor, not Councillor, Te Pio Kawe.
Kia ora, just 2 points really. And it is around that rail option. So the option that I saw was that that the rail option was from Omokoro and included out Waitupuki. No?
So the rail options that you're referring to are the ones under the Urban Form and Transport Initiative, which are whole land use program options. This is a concept of a bus that effectively goes on the rail line somewhere around about Bay Park or Bay Fair and would go across the Matapihi Bridge and then would come off somewhere in this sort of CBD vicinity. So it's really a short connection to avoid having to go around the harbour option. So two different things altogether.
Are they then not in conflict with one another?
The Omokoro Te Puki is a long-term picture, so probably in the 30-plus time frame is the thinking. What we were asked to look at was opportunities that could be implemented in a relatively short time frame, so 0 to 3 to 5 year time frames. In fact, the elected members were asking us to look in the 0 to 1 to 2 year window.
My second question was with the option of coming through Matapihi, that we raised it earlier, that you'd be talking directly with Matapihi ASAP. Kia ora.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Granger.
Yeah, thanks. And we all know congestion is our major priority in our city. People out there keep telling us that, reminding us a lot. Anything that will help, I feel, this congestion is well worth proceeding with. And I think this is a possible opportunity that we may get something possibly done. I'll use that word may. Let's try, let's move, and something that'll move our traffic. So it's well worth proceeding with.
Any other speakers? Very quick right of reply, just that obviously it does have to tie in with the parking strategy. We have that coming along, and we know that we would have to see increased parking prices as part of levers that we pull to incentivise just general bus use, but also a park and ride strategy, because you've got to make it cost effective and you've got to make it time efficient. So this is now into the 2-year plus thing, but I believe we do need to see what we can do with KiwiRail in this regard. Yes, we need to communicate with Marapihi. It's a bit different having something go along a railway line that's, you know, having freight trains going down, but we will have to communicate and process that, as opposed to cyclists and even the ride, the idea that was a year ago where people would drive down and park at the bridge and walk across. But I personally, and I'll express my personal view about heavy rail and what is there currently in the UFTI, I believe it is not ever going to be sustainable in our city with the population increases that we have. The costs of heavy rail from Maumokoroa to Te Puke, I believe, are just absurd to consider. But it is in there. It'll have to get further investigated and a lot more analysis done. But I have seen that many reports. In fact, it was in the very first UFTI report that there's no city in Australasia that has a rail service with a population of heavy rail service of a population with less than 400,000 people, except Wellington, which had it already in place, and so on. So the train buses, the high rail buses, are an opportunity to see if that can work, and if that doesn't work, I really doubt whether heavy rail is going to come on without a huge investment from central government, not from us here. So I think this is just further work in progress, and the community have asked for it. You hear them talk about park and ride. We need to be able to do the analysis so we can say to them, yes it does, or no it doesn't work, and where it can work. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Let's show of hands, please. Those in favour, aye. That is Councillor Morris, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Kiddy, Councillor Clout, Councillor Salisbury, Councillor Granger and Councillor Baldock. Those opposed, Councillor Robson, Councillor Hollis, and I assume your hand is up, Councillor Arbery. Thank you. Against? So the motion is carried, and that will conclude our Urban Form and Transport Development Committee for today. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you to the public that are watching. I don't know, I'm not monitoring it, but we'll conclude. If members would just remain, please, after the